Okay, well, welcome, Professor Mohammad Momen, to today's discussion. We're going to be talking about digitization, particularly in respect to fashion and the garment sector globally, and we may touch on some of the challenges and outlooks for Bangladesh garment sector specifically. In terms of the format today, I'll give a short presentation and talk about how COVID has been a major challenge to the global fashion and garments industry, but it's also triggered a lot of structural change and new opportunities. And I think today's discussion is to begin that dialogue to understand what the major technology-driven changes are in garments, and technology and accelerated digitization has affected many sectors globally. From banking and fintech to e-commerce, to the way that we consume video content. So it's had a big impact, and I think it's already changing the way that customers are buying clothing, are thinking about fashion, and I think we can think about how to that may present us new opportunities, both for Bangladesh's garment sector and also Bangladesh's ICT sector. And they're both, Bangladesh, you could say the garment sector is the anchor or the linchpin of the Bangladesh economy. 80% of exports are being driven by garments, but at the same time, the government is very much focused on digital Bangladesh and a vision to create $5 billion of new exports in ICT. So I think this discussion may try and see some areas of synergy and collaboration between technology and garments. So let me start with a short presentation. Start here. Let's get to grips with Zoom.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Right. So I think the first point I want to make, actually, let me make the slides a little bit bigger. First point, this is from some analysis done by McKinsey. They do a very comprehensive, the global consulting firm. They do a very comprehensive the state of fashion in 2021. Not surprisingly, the major focus in the McKinsey report was what they call the Global Fashion Index, was the dramatic collapse in demand for clothing. Certainly in the first phase of the COVID crisis, you can see here a decline in economic profit for the global fashion industry of 90%, this line here. And also beyond the overall impact on demand, and obviously in Bangladesh, we felt it in terms of order cancellations last year. We also saw different kinds of disruptions. We saw the shift towards online e-commerce becoming more and more dominant with lockdowns and social distancing. And also there was a lot of supply chain disruptions. We forget about that now, but certainly in March, April, there was a lot of supply chain disruptions from COVID. That also was something that the industry was dealing with. This next slide shows there was two questions in the State of Fashion 2021 survey from McKinsey and another organization called Business of Fashion. So they asked all of the respondents globally, what are the three major challenges for the fashion industry? And you can see here that the biggest challenge was COVID-19 and the economic crisis. The second biggest challenge for the fashion industry was changing consumer demand and behavior. And the third was physical retail and store footfall declining. And you could argue that changing consumer behavior and the decline of the high street was already a trend that was there before COVID. Then in the next section here, you can see that they also asked all the respondents what they saw the biggest opportunity for the fashion industry was. And not surprisingly, the majority, 30%, thought that digital was the big opportunity for fashion and garments. Second was sustainability, and third was, maybe when I say market share gain, maybe consolidation in the industry. So I think one of the observations we'd make is that as consumers have shifted to digital, it's also a challenge and an opportunity for the global fashion industry. Retailers, whether online or physical or hybrid, clothing retailers and fashion brands are having to develop new ways to engage with and retain consumer engagement digitally, so social media, online. And also there's been a boom in some of the trends we'll discuss: live streaming, customer video chat, social shopping. And I think now the competition, the old model where just having a Facebook page or a nice looking website was good enough, that's changed. So the type of digital engagement for fashion is also changed quite dramatically, and now is very competitive and quite sophisticated. And that again presents an opportunity for, I think Bangladesh might be very well positioned, being the #2 global exporter of garments, but also having a very dynamic and rapidly growing ICT sector. Next section shows, and I'll go through this presentation moment by, if there's anything any comments you want to make during the presentation, feel free to interrupt, or we can then have a broader discussion afterwards, whichever you prefer. So I think as in terms of social media, we know right inside Facebook is now 2.3 billion people, users: YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, WeChat, Instagram. What is interesting, I was just reading today that ByteDance, which owns TikTok, ByteDance doubled their revenues, to $33.4 billion in 2020. So this small TikTok app, and ByteDance is now worth $180 billion. So despite all of the problems last year with the Trump administration threatening to block TikTok from America and so on, I mean, I think nothing to me summarizes the incredible impact of COVID on digitization and the disruptive impact than the owner of TikTok doubling their revenues. And I think they probably made more money from the domestic Chinese market. They have a TikTok equivalent, which we'll talk about later, Daewoo, and they so that TikTok has become a phenomenon, but also become a real driver of e-commerce. I think there's a lot of other interesting trends in terms of engagement on social media. So another major trend has been the boom in influencers. So influencer-based selling, and the importance of storytelling on the influencer market. I think the best example is Kylie Jenner of the Kardashians fame. So she's now created $1 billion. So she has 200 million followers on Instagram, I think second only behind Cristiano Ronaldo. But she has converted that into $1 billion cosmetics company. So she's used that reach and social engagement. You've got somebody, in the early 20s creating $1 billion company. Young people in Bangladesh can be doing something similar. Bangladesh actually has, I would call it we have a Facebook generation in Bangladesh. It's the third biggest Facebook, community in Asia, after I think India and Thailand. And certainly Dhaka city is the third biggest city of Facebook users after Mumbai and Bangkok. So we have that culture. So influencers, I mean, I think that one example, one of the big RMG companies I visited a few months ago when I was in Dhaka, they were telling me that they now are participating in an Amazon promotion, where Amazon actually has now a structured program where they have a whole bunch of influencers who come on and market clothing. Then they model it, and they even design it themselves. And these are 30-day, so they're only available for 30 days. And interestingly, these very let's say collector's items and very quick turnaround are being made in Bangladesh. So you've got a US influencer coming online, live streaming, selling something, and then being manufactured in Bangladesh. It's pretty amazing, and that's one of the things that the McKinsey report highlighted. A tactic to grab consumers' attention is to use social media to tap into what they call the drop culture associated with streetwear labels. You make something differentiated and valuable, both because you're an influencer and people want to emulate you, but also you're making something, giving it with scarcity value as well. And Kanye West, again, is another dollar billionaire now. I guess an ex-Kardashian wife, but he's also made $1 billion. Actually, he's worth $3 billion. And he's again made it by making sneakers, exclusive items. So Sneezy brand of sneakers. So there's a lot of these trends which are happening and are now accelerated. Another big thing that is interesting in terms of global fashion is the explosion in the live streaming market. And China has led the way. I think the Chinese live streaming is now 10% of all all e-commerce sales in China are now live streaming. And I think actually in Bangladesh, there's also, I think, a nascent and growing live streaming market. So that's another big opportunity. As far as you can see here in the next slide, live streaming, I said 10%, 9% of e-commerce sales, and 1% of global sales. And you have some people, the TikTok, sorry, the lipstick king in China is actually the biggest seller of lipsticks in China is a guy. And he has got to 800 million followers in China on social media. So it's pretty amazing. So again, this is something which is growing in Bangladesh, and we can continue with that. So I think so let me go. So basically, as far as the circular economy is concerned, it's another major trend. We also are seeing a major boom, I think, in circular economy. So closed recycling, something that Bangladesh is doing really well. I don't know here. I think maybe Momen, I'll pause for a second because I've been talking for a while. Did you want to comment a bit on digital, or do you want to talk a bit about circular economy? We're certainly seeing. We've already seen before COVID that circular economy and sustainability has become a big issue. But did you want to comment a bit on digital first, or?
Yeah, I think what the 2 points you have already made, one is digital and the COVID challenges and the opportunities. I think, we can talk about both of these. I think digital, transformation of fashion is both a challenge and also an opportunity for Bangladesh, because when the garment industry here in Bangladesh started, it was all volume driven, large manufacturing capacities, and so factories were designed, factories were laid down to cater to orders like that. And with the gradual transformation of the digital economy and in the West, and then prompted or accelerated by the COVID crisis, it is becoming all the more, difficult for companies who were primarily dependent on large orders like that, and with even longer lead time, and brick and mortar shop, etc., to cater to this kind of market. So, but this is going forward. I think this would be the key business that all of our Bangladeshi manufacturers will have to tend to, because they have to increase the capability of dealing with shorter lead time, maybe smaller size orders, and also try to be more efficient with the pace at which the digital economy or the digital marketing and the digital business is requiring us to sort of cope with. So the opportunity lies in mostly Bangladesh has been a B2B supplier, and maybe this is going to be an opportunity to some of the manufacturers who could venture into B.
Yeah,
because
sorry, please finish, Momen.
Yeah, because in the past it was almost impossible for anybody to attempt to be in a retail space with such huge investments and with such big players. But I think the cases that you have cited with live streaming, with influencers, with all of these TikTok videos and all of these I would say, digital apps, it is probably getting slightly less difficult compared to the way it was. And maybe new generation designers and entrepreneurs can venture into these kind of opportunities. So with Bangladesh having such a big, manufacturing base, it might be a big opportunity for Bangladesh if we can tap into this, and if we can, connect these people together, and maybe with these, it would be possible for us to venture into things that were absolutely impossible in the past, meaning when things were not that so digitized. Talking about circular economy, we already have some, recycle yarn, recycle, waste, I would say cut components, etc., that were previously being thrown away as a waste are now being transformed into a yarn or a fabric. And this trend has started, and many of our orders are having partially recycled yarn, partially I would say not only yarn and fabric, but also other components. Like these are used as used to be a waste. Now they're brought back into the mainstream production. And this, I believe, in going forward, will only be popularized, and there will be more and more investment in this sector, so that the economy becomes much more circular. And recycling will probably be the name of the game going forward. And with more and more, consumer awareness, this is likely to happen. And with digitization and with all of these influencers, it is more, easier to penetrate into this market, and these ideas will be much more fast catching up than in the past. Things were, like, I would say, it was much more slower. And environmental issues are becoming important, not only by social activists, but also by brands and the consumers. So as a result, I think this is going to be an issue which Bangladesh manufacturers has to take very seriously. Over to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I think one of the observations, and not just about garments, but about technology, this is more broadly, and this is one of the things that we set Pathfinder up and a group of us have come together is to recognize that COVID is put huge pressure on the UK economy and the Bangladesh economy. Many businesses are in crisis. But how do we look at some of the opportunities as we come out of COVID, what the structural changes in COVID? Certainly one of the things, it's true, as I mentioned at the beginning, in a very global sense and across many industries, but we're also seeing much more digital integration and much in different economies, and much faster speed from idea to market. So again, thinking about the influencer market, I was talking to I think it was somebody who was a DJ last week, and they were asking about Pathfinder. It was actually a young female DJ, and she was asking about joining Pathfinder and about what the opportunities. And we were talking about how to monetize digital content. And I know this may not seem like it links into garments, but it will link to garments. But the thing about monetizing content, and she was saying she produces lots of, well, she can't do as many nightclub gigs as she used to be able to because of the lockdowns, and her business is in crisis. And how can she get more viewers on Facebook? Anyway, and when I was just saying brainstorming, and I was saying that actually, if you take the Kylie Jenner example, and she was saying, well, what is the relevance of Kylie Jenner to being a DJ in Bangladesh? But I was saying that actually, what somebody like her or somebody else could do is actually start thinking about create the digital content she creates, whether it's mixing, writing music, recording herself, talking about the night scene or about the music scene. How can you use that to sell more products? And actually, I was saying that person could actually start creating a clothing brand. The thing about having digital content and then associate it with a product is still relatively new, and that's quite different. I know in Bangladesh there are many live streamers who, and I all power to them and credit, and I think it's already empowering many people who are sitting at home, are struggling to make a living. At least they have an opportunity to sell clothing and make a living. But that's a bit different to creating digital content and then converting that into a brand, a product, a design, a fashion design, and then linking it to production and then distribution and marketing. So I think that's probably the next step that we can collectively think about. And again, that, I remember speaking to many large RMG companies in Bangladesh, and they said, well, we don't know what to say consumers and young consumers in the UK, what do they like? How do we create a brand? Or how do we create a design? Well, firstly, the young in Bangladesh and the young in the UK share a lot of similar interests now. But secondly, you can see how there can be a collaboration between, say, British Bangladeshis, young British Bangladeshis, many of whom are also unemployed, or they can be students who are everybody's struggling from COVID, the COVID economic crisis. So they're struggling. And in Bangladesh, the young people in Bangladesh are also struggling. But can we not collaborate on design, on thinking, probably all the way from your students' IBA, all the way to garments. So I think that's how we have to think outside the box in terms of design innovation. Sorry, Momen, please.
That's okay. I think individual lifestyle, influencing. Let's say somebody is a bodybuilder, somebody is into gym activities, or sportswear. So they can be, if they become an influencer, if they become big digitally, so their own lifestyle can come up into a product range, and people will influence to do that. There are many examples like that. So you are talking about the night, the DJ. She could be an influencer herself, and then there could be followers, and there could be a specific line of products, very particular niche market maybe, but still that could be an interesting area to explore. So like same way there could be gym wear, sportswear, etc. So this sort of lifestyle, they become popular with, I don't know, you have named so many people. They became popular on Instagram, on TikTok, and on all of these medias. Doing something, the lipstick guy you mentioned. So those are the various, I think, youngsters that, with Pathfinder and efforts like this, you should, bring them together. And then that would probably create a new dimension in the business, the way we think, and probably that kind of co-creation of design. We don't know what a European or a British, youngster would want or think, and Bangladeshi manufacturer, a British design, a British content writer, it could co-create a product, a service, something that would probably be more interesting to an audience like that. So yeah, that is very much possible, to collaborate like that. And I think Pathfinder is doing a fine job, bringing all these people together. So, and again, the ethnicity that you said, British Bangladeshis. So there could be a market, specific to this ethnicity, and that could probably, open up another line. So far, Bangladesh RMG has been focusing on the mainstream products. So, but then there could be other avenues open to us, with ethnicity, with specific kind of lifestyle, etc., that would probably bring in a whole new dimension that was previously non-existent.
So you're mentioning active sportswear. So I was going to give you the fastest and youngest billionaire in the UK is exactly what you mentioned. So Jim Shark, basically he's was I think he started his business in his early 20s, sitting unemployed in his bedroom. I know it's one of these cliches, but sitting in his bedroom and and just sat there looking out the window at his computer screen and thinking, I can't get a job. What do I do? But what his passion was, he was obsessed with fitness and bodybuilding. So he started to do regular YouTube videos about fitness, and he was professional about the way he recorded the videos, but he started himself. It wasn't, and he started recording these videos. But his, let's say, genius, I mean, if it's not genius in that sense, but let's say business genius, you don't become a billionaire in your 20s. He's in his late 20s now. He's a billionaire, sterling billionaire. And but his vision, his innovation was to say, you know what, I'm not going to try and make like, you know, 10, 20,000 pounds per year by getting a number of, or 50,000 pounds per year by getting a lot of Facebook likes or YouTube views or TikTok views. Actually, interestingly, he mainly sources his products from Bangladesh. So, and China. So he's in Vietnam. He then said, okay, I'm going to convert that follower base that I have and that concept and passion that people have for fitness, and I'm going to convert that into a product. And now he's hugely, and in fact, I think he's turned down several offers from private equity funds to buy out his business. So coming back to Bangladesh, so I would say both young people in Bangladesh and young people in the UK, I see there's nothing unique about what he did that cannot be done by other people who have a passion for something. It may be for sports and fitness. It may be for night clubbing. It may be for video games, whatever it is. I mean, the most lucrative areas of live streaming is video gaming. But once one has let's say a strong follower base, and you have a clear theme or connection with your user base or your followers, then you can also create lots of different products. You know, whether it's garments, in sportswear, it can be cosmetics and beauty products. And I think again, I would reemphasize. You know, you're a business school professor, so it's important to be precise. But it's a very big difference between selling an existing product, like let's say live streaming, in terms of live streaming as a salesperson, an online salesperson, and that's a huge opportunity as well. As opposed to actually creating concepts and brands that can then be monetized by creating your own branding. So that's the kind of way that the world has shifted as we become more and more digitally connected. There's another £1 billion business that's about to be IPO'd, where again, they're just, the people sitting at home, yes, of course, are consuming Netflix, and we're kind of in the Netflix digital media consumption era, but other new platforms are creating customized digital content for particular groups and finding ways to differentiate themselves from those other digital media platforms. So you can go for a subscription model there for digital media, or you can find other ways to monetize through product. So I think the world is really moving very fast.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, like the lifestyle. I mean, when you have a follower base for whatever that you're doing, be it video gaming, be it I would say bodybuilding or sports or outdoor activities or whatever, each of these behaviors, each of these hobbies, each of these lifestyles could be monetized in terms of a product. And textile could be, even if you're a video gamer, you could create a t-shirt, you could create a product, your tracksuit with that kind of gaming theme with it. So that there could be a designer, a content creator, a lifestyle, I would say influencer. All of them can come together, and still, there are ways so that we could monetize it in terms of some sort of a product. And and textile would be the most common product that comes out, because you have seen textile for beer ads, we have seen textile for cigarettes, we have seen textile for soft drinks, all of those, and cars, Formula One, talk about anything. So it has been in the past used for many different kind of industry and businesses. So it doesn't have to be particularly anything to do with fashion. It could be any other thing, but the whole influencer base can be monetized in terms of products out, and that is how I think the RMG industry of Bangladesh can kind of encash with a collaboration with, if you can,
I think one of the things, Momen, that you mentioned, you alluded to earlier, which I think is very important for people to understand, who listen, especially young people, but anybody, is that actually the barriers to entry are very low. You and I are just talking on Zoom. I remember when I was discussing starting this business discussion channel of sorts, and one of my team was saying, yes, but we need nice lighting, and we need We should have a proper studio and so on. And I was saying, yeah, okay, that's fine. But actually, more important than the studio and the lighting is the content. And so similarly, what I'm really trying to say is that firstly for RMG companies and brands, for RMG companies in Bangladesh to go B2C, the costs of doing that are much, much lower. If you think 5-10 years ago, what would they have to do? 10 years ago, they'd probably have to think, okay, I need X million pounds for an advertising budget. Okay, I need that. I need another tens of millions of pounds for a retail presence on the high street. I need all of these different things. So the combination of digitization, e-commerce, and the dramatic growth in digital content engagement and social media means that for a company, I'm not saying it's easy, nothing is ever easy, but I'm saying that it's not a matter of necessarily just capex. Yes, you need some budget to do these things, but actually, if you have an innovative idea, like the Gymshark idea is the best example. If you are sitting at home and you start recording, if you have differentiated high quality content, if your idea is innovative, then later on, yes, you can get better cameras and better lighting and other things. But actually, so certainly the barriers for both companies and individuals to create content has come down. So I think that we're right in the middle of this huge trend. Again, quality is important. I think in the live streaming market in China, I'm sure it's true in Bangladesh, I'm sure it's true in the UK. You need to think carefully about your content. It's very competitive to get viewers and to attract followers. But it's not a matter of money. It's more about thinking about how can you be innovative? And I think that our young generation in Bangladesh and in the British Bangladeshi community in the UK are extremely creative and innovative. It's what we can do as business people, technologists, thinkers. How can we help them in terms of developing platforms and frameworks to create this content, and then as garments companies and the industry to help monetize that. So I think that we have a very unique opportunity.
Many of those TikTokers or content creators don't even know that what they are possessing. I mean, so you might want to look at, because you might see, whenever, I haven't seen much of TikToks, but I've seen few. I see they're very creative. And then you don't know how, they may not be knowing how to monetize that. So that's something, as a business person, maybe here you can, engage a series of, review of those TikTok videos, and then come up and select some, and then maybe kind of guide them towards, this direction that you are looking at, so that, you create those contents, and that will probably, eventually be encashable and monetized. So I'm sure that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think that crowdsourcing these ideas and having competitions, I think is something we should consider both in the UK and Bangladesh. And I just wanted to re-emphasize one point. I think we have people hopefully watching today in both the UK and in Bangladesh, but actually I think the problems are the same. Having one foot in both countries, very much so. And I know, Momen, you're very international and global. Many people in the government sector are. But actually, it's not the case. People sitting in Bangladesh who are watching and thinking, yeah, but in the UK, it's much easier. In Bangladesh, it's very difficult. Actually, in the UK, there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of new unemployed. And the COVID, because of COVID. So there are millions of unemployed from COVID. And the ethnic minority community, the British Bangladeshi community and other ethnic minorities have been disproportionately hit both in health and in economic terms. So there are hundreds of thousands of young people, millions in the UK and other developed countries, who are facing the same series of uncertainties and challenges and mental health issues and uncertainty about the future, uncertainty about their economic future. Many of them actually have seen their university life disrupted, for those that are lucky enough to go to university. And for the people who aren't going to university, there are just no jobs for young people. I think I'm just agreeing with what you're saying. I think that both with Pathfinder and with other organizations, we are beginning the engagement process with regional development authorities and in the UK to try and think about how to give digital upskilling and give skills and training, because it may be, say, a TikTok person, somebody that records a very good TikTok or a YouTube, they may need some guidance. Okay, you're doing it this way. Maybe if you did it this way, then you'd have more chance of selling product. Secondly, how do you start to market products from your videos? There is some guidance and training, but the basic creativity, I completely agree with you, is already there. I'm always really impressed by people who have no, say, formal training, but let's say they're just creative, and young people are creative, and we have to again think how to create the platforms. I call it platform. So it can be a technology platform, it can be a business platform, to actually create new economic growth opportunities, income, and also self-sustainability for people who are, and I think that even from a business school education perspective, I think business schools in the UK and business school students are will have to think about a very different kind of world and a very different career trajectory, where they have to think about all of these, accelerated digitizations and move away from just thinking about working in a bank or working in a multinational in a traditional way, because every bank and every multinational and every RMG house is being disrupted by this, is being affected by this digital disruption. So I think that's something else we have to think about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the last conversation that I had with you, you were referring to your regional cooperation, that you were talking with the various regional government agencies. They are trying to rejuvenate the marketplace, the high streets, etc. So I think in those areas also, if you can engage, I would say some sort of personalization of the product, some sort of customization of the product, and there I think the digitization and the content creation would be of much greater cooperation in those areas. And as you were mentioning about the Bangladeshi company, which told you that they weren't aware of how the British market or the developed countries markets are. So those are the areas in which these youngsters who are playing, I mean, currently unemployed, but in these areas where they have, I would say, the knack or the skill or talent could be brought together and to create something which is non-existent now, but could be of some interest. I mean, like sort of customization of the product. I would say half-made or semi-processed goods or semi, and then finishing them, customizing them into a product that would give some uniqueness to the individual, and the designers could do AR, VR in the process, and probably give them a feel and something, an experience that was otherwise a conventional retail space was not offering. So I think
I was just showing this is something Momen, by you and I have been, not just this, and this is not an abstract discussion, I'd say it's actually a reasonably live discussion now. We just had a meeting with the West Midlands Regional Development Authority, so it's the second biggest in the UK after London. But we were talking about global growth clusters and garments clusters, and I'll come on to that. But one thing that this next slide shows the retail store of the future. It's actually again a McKinsey concept, but actually many brands are considering that. And you can see the way that, I mean, one of the big challenges in the UK, and I think indeed in America and many other countries, is kind of the death of the high street. So when in Bangladesh, we've seen Arcadia and Debenhams and other companies going bankrupt. But one of the reasons they're going bankrupt beyond COVID is they were already struggling, because these traditional high street presence, if you go to small towns like Oldham, it's a suburb of Manchester, a number of Pathfinder management and board members are from Oldham, you'll see that the high street's almost empty. All the shops have shut down. And so one of the big challenges that the UK regional governments are facing is the emptying out of the high street. Now the question is, because everybody's shopping online, so because of, even before COVID, but now even more so because of COVID, people are buying on Amazon, or they're going to out of town big retail parks. So how can you make the retail store of the future a go-to destination? And one of the ways to do that, I think, is, and you and I have discussed it, is to make it a differentiated technology experience. And so you can see here, I mean, we're talking about having sensors, and so when every customer that comes in, you know whether it's a male or a female, you can start monitoring even it scans their mobile wallet, so they don't even have to worry about going to a general till to pay, RFID tags and cameras and so on. But one thing that, one thing here, you were talking about augmented reality, virtual reality. So this next slide kind of gives people a flavor who are less techie what we mean. So, you know, rather than like, if we go into a retail shop and then normally you want to see how that clothing looks on you, you go into a changing room, put it on and see how it looks on you. But you can see from this slide here, in the augmented reality world, you can actually click on a piece of clothing and it will, you know, then it will, basically it's like virtually putting on the piece of clothing. And you can try 4 or 5 pieces of clothing in AR space. Now, the reason I mentioned this, and we were talking about this at the moment with some of the regional development authorities, that again, there's an opportunity for partnership between Bangladesh technology sector, garment sector, and those in the UK. There are AR and VR companies in Bangladesh. There are even more experienced AR VR companies in the UK. They can work together with the garment companies to create this, you know, augmented reality experience that will make more people go back to the high street. And it can be trying on clothes. It can be when you're clicking, you can see in the bottom, when you're clicking on a tablet, you can see that special offers come up when you click on something. So it can be very complex and sophisticated and quite simple. And I think some of the garment companies in Bangladesh are already experimenting with this.
Yeah, I mean, so like these are the areas of future cooperation, man. I mean, this could be a very remote sounding right now, but the way things are progressing, you know, we have to develop these capabilities to kind of cope up. Even if we are not doing it ourselves, our customers would be asking.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of your customers,
kind of, you know, himself to cope up with this kind of requirements. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one of the biggest customers from Bangladesh is Zara, Inditex, and this slide shows Inditex back in 2018 was moving to a hybrid model of online and a physical store online, so that you can they're kind of accelerating fast fashion by making their physical stores relevant by integrating technology. So again, I think that even before COVID, this trend was happening, and I think it's only going to accelerate. Also, fashion technology is another. So using different kinds of technology actually change the clothing itself. There've been, I think, a number of different events in Bangladesh where, you know, sensors and LED lighting and other things are embedded into the fabric to again make the clothing itself an intelligent clothing. Again, this is a natural area of collaboration between the ICT sector in Bangladesh and the RMG sector, the 2 big sectors. We'll just finishing off for the next 10-15 minutes, but you can see that Bangladesh has done very well, second biggest, but I think we saw the collapse in RMG exports last year. There's been something of a recovery, but we saw all these buyer cancellations. But as we were saying before, I think that before in the conversation, you know, the other thing that McKinsey report highlighted is that the evolution of the whole of the Asian apparel manufacturers, and not just Bangladesh, has gone from cut, trim, make to now moving to more sophisticated fabrics and different kinds of garments. And now what I call B2C, they call D2C, direct to consumers. So now you've already seen, I think, China taking the lead and going direct to consumers in garments and fashion. And I think that that's a trend which you're going to see increasing. I mean, the right-hand side slide here shows in 3 years, the share of the top sellers on Amazon Marketplace that are based in China has doubled. So you can see that China's gone from the traditional B2B model to going directly to consumers via Amazon.
Yeah, so, I mean, not necessarily a Bangladeshi manufacturer has to own a brand and go to B2C. But my customers may require me, I mean, my brand whom I'm working with currently, they may be, you know, in future asking for direct to customer deliveries. In that case, I have to create the product, have it ready, ship it. Right now, we are doing to multiple countries and destination because of the hubs that they're having. when it may so happen with technology that they might want us directly delivered to the end consumers because they sold it online. So it doesn't have to touch their country or any other base because it's selling. It is now borderless. So if they have sold something to China or India and manufactured in Bangladesh, it doesn't have to go to Spain or Italy and then go to China or then go to India. It can directly go from Bangladesh to India, whereas the sales was created or made in their website or in their marketplace that they have done it digitally. So these are the kind of capabilities that I think in future factories and manufacturers in Bangladesh will have to attain, or we have to sort of gain. Otherwise, we'll be losing out. And here the ICT and this the technology aspect and the technology companies, they come into play. So all the more both the technology companies here and the technology companies, maybe let's say UK, to collaborate more into this kind of activity, so that eventually if this happens, that we are already ready to do it. The reason some of the companies, despite the pandemic, has been having good businesses because they have had their the technological infrastructure based already ready, and they were already practicing it for many years, let's say 5-10 years from the past. So they had little or no problem to coping up with this scenario, and maybe they just kind of increase the volume or increase the scale it up so that to cater to the current surge in demand because of COVID online over the brick and mortar. So I think that was the strength these few of the companies were already having. So I think for Bangladesh to tackle these issues in coming future, there has to be we have to think way ahead and create our strength so that we can do, maybe as you mentioned, direct to consumer. So direct to consumer, not necessarily we have to be creating our own brand to do it. Maybe our supplying brands have got the deliveries direct to customers, and we as their manufacturer will have to deliver it to them. So this probably is going to be another thing that another challenges that maybe Bangladeshi manufacturers may be facing. So the Bangladeshi manufacturers will probably have to think in that line and build up on the strengths. Over to you.
Yeah, no, I think we're just finishing up in the last couple of minutes. So I think that you make a lot of good points. It doesn't have. I think we're creating whole new markets and opportunities. So as you were saying, it can be a win-win between the existing large buyers in Bangladesh and the garment manufacturers. And I think that the global buyers during COVID have also been struggling, with the exception of the very high-end, ultra luxury end of the market. So I'm sure they'll welcome some new collaborative partnerships and new innovations from Bangladesh. I think that they're also trying to find new opportunities.
The other thing I would like to stress is that all these disruptions eventually are making people to lose jobs, both in developed countries and also in the developing countries. So I think the innovators should continuously, especially the ones from our side, should put in their efforts to use the disruptive technology, all right, but to create more jobs and to make more jobs more humanistic than more robotized. So that way, probably people, there will be more jobs for people, and then the elements, the human touch, which is gradually getting missed out from a product, maybe brought back, and which might be a very much important aspect going forward. And people will, as we see that the human touch is getting out. So we need to think of innovation that would probably bring those things back and to create a product. I don't know if it is more abstract to give it some real life product knowledge wise. If you want to craft a product with a machine made or even a robotized product, but a part of it is crafted with hand, that makes it creates some more jobs and makes the product more appealing to a customer, which probably a very automated process cannot do. So I think these are the things the innovators should also consider going forward to create some more jobs not just be destructive. I mean, it should be more, I mean, I would say using the disruptive technology to create something more, not just disruption. So that's,
yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think that we can end, I mean, I'll make a closing comment and then we can wrap up. I think that what you're alluding to, which is maybe the topic for a future discussion, maybe more of an IBA discussion, but a more strategic economic discussion. But I think when we think about the fourth industrial revolution and technology and jobs, that it's a very large topic. But I think what you're alluding to, and absolutely right, I think that there's an inevitability. You cannot overcome technology. You can't. It's like King Canute trying to turn back the waves. So there's an inevitability that, number one, there will be fewer manual jobs. Number two, Bangladesh's low-cost labor advantage is going to diminish because you will see what we don't think is, people are, I think, complacent and saying, well, it's not economic to replace somebody in Bangladesh with a robot. Because technology costs are falling so fast, so rapidly, in 5 or 10 years' time, that will be absolutely the case. That stitching and these other basic things.
To be, if you're bringing jobs onshore, so it doesn't have to be in Bangladesh. The rotation can take place onshore, so on near shore. So that way, they would robotize near. So we will still be losing jobs. So yeah, well, so it doesn't have to.
Yeah, but I think what I was really, again, trying to say as an economist is to say, if you look 10, 20, 30 years forward as a kind of futurist observation, you would say that you have to move into, you have to create more, you have to do more creative jobs. So you have to create more jobs in the creative economy, so to speak, as opposed to just manual labor, which I think is what you were saying as well.
Absolutely.
So this is part of that process. Yeah. That's one of the ways that a country like Bangladesh can create lots of new jobs for young people or for anybody by creating these platforms. And today we talked about digital content and digitization and garments, but how do you create it? Because human creativity, and actually the best example is an artist. It's very difficult for an artist or for a musician or a singer or a poet to be, or an author to be replaced by a robot or by AI. So I think extending that to garments, we need to continue this thinking about increasing this digital platforms for creativity and linking it to garments and other sectors. So I think with that, I think we've covered quite a lot of issues. I know it's late on a Thursday evening in Dhaka, so the weekend's about to start. And I wanted to thank you again for joining the discussion. I think it was hopefully gave everybody that watched some food for thought. And maybe in the future we can have a broader discussion with some other representatives from the garment sector, maybe also from the business school as well. So thank you again for your time, Momen Bhai. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody else for joining, and also everybody have a good weekend in Bangladesh and a good almost weekend in the UK. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.